Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel again. Hope this time you will learn something new in money laundering techniques, that is structuring. Today we are delving deep into the shadowy world of finance to uncover a technique that is as clever as it is illegal, and the specific technique is nothing but structuring. According to Ostrach definition, structuring is where a person deliberately 1. Splits cash transactions to avoid a single large transaction being reported in threshold transaction reports. 2. Travels with cash amounts in a way that avoids declaring cross-border movements of the cash. Structuring can be a money laundering technique and is against the law under the AML and CFT Act. You might have heard of a term called smurfing, and it's one of the most common ways criminals try to wash dirty money. Smurfing is detrimental works of structuring. So, what exactly is it? How does it work? And how are financial institutions fighting back? Let's get into it. So, what is structuring? Imagine you have a huge pile of cash, say $25,000, that you need to get into the banking system. Here's the catch. In many countries, like the US, any cash transaction over $10,000 automatically triggers a report to the authorities. It's called a cash currency transaction report, or CTR reporting. Criminals obviously want to avoid that kind of attention. So instead of making one big, conspicuous deposit, they break it down. This is the essence of structuring, designing a transaction specifically to fly under the radar of reporting requirements. It's a crime in many places and a massive red flag for money laundering. Let's look at a simple example. Let's say Haider, an individual, needs to send a $15,000 wire transfer from his country to another jurisdiction. In his country, any transfer over $3,000 gets recorded. So what does he do? Certainly he will transfer the money and will find out a means to fulfill his intention. This isn't just a modern problem either. Let's go back to the 1980s for a classic case study. Meet Isaac Catton, a travel agent who was secretly laundering an estimated $500 million a year in drug money. That's right, $500 million. Couriers would show up at his apartment with suitcases stuffed with cash from drug distributors, all destined for suppliers in Colombia. One of Catani's methods was to bribe officials at a local bank to simply ignore his massive cash deposits and not file the required reports. Around the same time, another operator named Hernan Botero was running a smaller but similar scheme. He was laundering about $100 million a year from his home. Testimony in court revealed he bribed employees at his bank to accept daily cash deposits from his front companies. From there, the money was wired to Miami accounts of Colombian banks and then easily sent to Colombia. Both Catton and Botero were eventually caught and sentenced to 30 years in federal prison, proving that while structuring is sneaky, the law eventually catches up. So how do the big international players do it? Foreign money brokers have turned structuring into a sophisticated system. Here's a typical playbook. First, a structurer working for the broker will open a ton of checking accounts in, let's say, country A. They use a mix of real and fake names, sometimes even using identity documents of deceased people to open these accounts. They make small, unsuspicious initial deposits, usually just a few $1,000s. They might even deposit extra funds to make it look like the accounts are being used for normal living expenses, adding a layer of legitimacy. Once the accounts are active, the structurer signs all the new checks but leaves the payee date and amount lines blank. These signed blank checks are then couriered to the money broker in country B. A single structurer might set up dozens of these accounts. The broker now has a whole portfolio of seemingly legitimate US or European bank accounts at their disposal. The accounts don't accumulate large balances. They're used to pay for goods that the broker's clients are exporting from country A. This way, the drug or other illegal money from country B is effectively swapped for clean money from the checking accounts in country A. With hundreds of these accounts active at any given time, we're talking about tens of millions of dollars being laundered each year, all through this complex web of small structured transactions. So, what are banks and financial institutions doing about this? They are constantly in a cat and mouse game with launderers. They invest heavily in sophisticated transaction monitoring systems. Those systems use artificial intelligence and machine learning tools to detect the patterns that a human might miss and thus try to detect such kind of transactions. These systems can flag a series of transactions that, while individually small, collectively form a suspicious in pattern. For example, the software can connect multiple deposits made by the same person at different branches on the same day, or deposits into multiple accounts that are all linked back to a single individual or address. But the criminals are always adapting. They learn the rules of the monitoring systems and find new ways to get around them. They might use different runners, vary the amounts more randomly, or spread the activity over a longer period. This is why human expertise is still crucial. Bank compliance officers are trained to look for red flags that go beyond just numbers, things like a customer whose transaction activity doesn't match their stated profession, or someone who seems nervous when asked basic questions about the source of their funds. Ultimately, combating structuring requires a multi-layered approach. It takes powerful technology, sharp-eyed financial professionals, and strong cooperation between banks and law enforcement agencies. Every time you see a headline about a major bust, remember the complex financial trail that investigators had to follow. Structuring remains one of the most common and challenging forms of money laundering to detect. It's a constant battle, and financial institutions are on the front lines, working to protect the integrity of our global financial system. It's a fascinating, high-stakes world where every transaction tells a story, and the goal is to find the ones that are trying to hide the truth. Thanks so much for watching today's deep dive. I hope you found it as interesting as I do. If you learned something about structuring, please give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss our next exploration into the hidden corners of the world. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or ideas for future topics. Stay curious and hope to meet you in the next video to learn some new knowledge. Thank you.